Welcome in here to HGC North America, where it's somewhat of a sorting day of sorts, as we're going to discover who's making the chase towards the playoffs and who's going to be finding themselves in the Crucible range. And we've still got a few more weeks to go, but there's a lot of action still to be had. My name is Jay Howe. Joining me is Dreadnought. Dreadnought, today we get to see some of the middle of the pack as well as some of the teams that could potentially be on the rise.
Yeah, and teams that are standing out for me today specifically that I'm very much going to be looking forward to has got to be Freedom and No Tomorrow. Not even for the fact that they're going to be playing, but the teams and the rosters and the success that they've had over the first couple of weeks. What comes to light here in this weekend, as this is going to be the first time we see them under this weekend?
It's going to be a good day for sure as we check out the standings so we can put this into context to see where some of these teams lie, because later today, of course, we'll get to the schedule in just a moment, but Team Freedom, Dreadnought, they still have some questions to be answered. Of course, Heroes Hearth picking up that clutch victory and Octalysis making moves, but then we turn our attention towards the likes of Endemic and LFM and No Tomorrow for the rest of this weekend, because some of those teams, they need to be on the rise if they want to make the push towards the playoffs, which we're only a few weeks away.
Yeah, and when looking at, teams like Endemic, we have such kind of highs and lows, and I feel like it is the same case when looking at Team Freedom. So today is going to be a breaking point, and as you said, as we're kind of sifting through these teams to figure out who will end up in the Crucible.
Well, here's the look at the schedule, as we did have some EU action before this. Leftovers, Team Liquid starting to stumble the last few weeks. One of those was to Dignitas, but losing to Leftovers, starting to shake things up, potentially shaking up the standings on the top half of Europe. Of course, Roll20 in their last game amassed 27 kills to 2 in their final game. I don't know if we see too many games like that, but that's kind of what rounded out the European action. Of course, LFM versus Endemic, our nightcap. But Dreadnought, Team Freedom, and No Tomorrow is how we're going to start the day. Team Freedom, we saw the dominant performance out of them just a few weeks ago, but then the team of Endemic came back and said, hold on a second, we can counter your strategy, a team that seems to be looking for some answers.
And when we saw that performance of Team Freedom, it felt like it was the first time a team had taken that early game strategy that we know Team Freedom to really approach with their games. The first couple of minutes, what they want to make happen with the rotations, and Endemic dismantled that pretty effectively. And when that happened, it seemed like Freedom suddenly became almost stubborn, as if that was the only approach that they had really had for that early game, and couldn't adapt on the fly. And that is a big thing I'm looking for Freedom here today, is to see them stick with that offensive playmaking compositions and play style, but then not being stubborn if things fall apart early.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about this matchup, and we talked to some of our players as well to hear their thoughts, and we'll check those out right now.
First, Freedom, it should definitely be better, because most HGC teams have told us during scrims that our new set of roles that we have for each other are giving us better performance in scrims and in tournament, as we took a game off Heroes Hearth. I feel that with our new roles that Casa as tank is able to put the information that is needed as a tank to carry most games, because he's very vocal, and as a tank he'd be very vocal to be able to succeed. And I feel like that Casa does a very good job at that, and as ranged, it's very easy for me to be able to follow up off of him. So this new formula that we have going should definitely lead to some wins this season.
I mean, I think our set versus No Tomorrow is more about getting our foot back on the ground, I feel like. Like, it's not about number one anymore, it's just about getting ready for playoffs. So I guess there's like less stress on us. So I think it's a good thing. For a series against No Tomorrow, I think Tom going back to range is a big thing for them. In my eyes, at least, he's always been a range player. I played range with him in the past, and he was always a god back in the day, so I think that's just his role, and I think that's a reason they're doing better right now.
Dreadnought, we heard from Collusion. It said, just getting our feet on the ground. Tomster said, we're just trying to find our footing, period, as the role swaps have come in. But we heard from Collusion a couple years ago. They were teammates. Collusion was a tank player back in the day. T-God obviously came in as the ranged assassin, but it's been a long time because he's been support and that offlaner for so long. For him to reestablish himself, to live up to that name of T-God, it hasn't been easy because No Tomorrow has still been trying to find their way, especially with the new swaps. But they do feel confident with Casanova now on that front line. The communication communication that he offers, maybe that's the direction that they need.
Yeah, and I feel like it shows a little bit there with the communication between Casanova and the rest of the squad. The follow-up very much seems to be there beyond even just that of Tomster. But within all of these role swaps and adjustments, I can't help but feel like the silver lining for me, especially from last week's performances, it's got to be Jin. On the off lane, he has done a very good job, especially when he gets on things like the URL. He is one of the youngest players we have in the entirety of HGC North America with his professional level of experience, and to be able to perform on multiple roles and then adapt that heavily to such a crucial kind of impactful role in Heroes of the Storm has really stood out to me here. And I think that if No Tomorrow has success against Freedom, it's going to be through his shoulders there.
Well, let's take a look at the Battlegrounds as Team Freedom banning out Brax's holdout. No Tomorrow taking Tomb of the Spider Queen out of this. And now we're going to Infernal Shrines, a map that we've seen Team Freedom on recently. Dreadnought, I can't help but go back to 2 weeks ago when they fell down 0-2 versus LFM. That is not a place Team Freedom expected to be. They had won 6 out of their last 7 series. And you look at the play that we saw when they went against Endemic. They lost the 2 to LFM. They picked this map. They went the Anubarak, the Greymane. They started just getting siege damage. They ignored objectives. They got the siege damage through the way of just the regular PvE. And they came back so hard to that they tried to replicate that in the Endemic strategy, in the Endemic series. And Endemic's like, well, that's nice. We know this is what you want to do. And this is the Team Freedom of old, where it's like, we need you to be aggressive, team fight. And we started to see that. But it feels like the LFM series shook them a little in their confidence.
It does feel like that very much was the case. And I think that, you know, as you were talking about Endemic and what they were able to make happen, and maybe the forcing of the Greymane alternative approach to Infernal Strides was a little bit too much there for Freedom. And that is why I was alluding to, it feels as if they were stubborn. And I want to see how they work on that here today. And No Tomorrow should be opponent based on that, finding their footing, that they really can come in, have a pretty dominant performance, and hopefully find themselves, you know, feeling like they've made progress in that avenue.
Well, Infernal Shrines during Phase 1 was always the Team Freedom pick. They stopped picking it, and now they're back to early picking it, high prioritizing this battleground. So we'll see if maybe they've developed some new strategies since last week.
It's a really interesting point that you bring up, though, because reverting to old is something that we also got from Team Freedom in the past with their kind of struggles that they endured against LFM. It felt like they immediately went back to that old macro kind of play style against their opponent, and it was why they were successful against LFM. But when Team Freedom looks at their best, it is with this newer iteration and kind of aggressive, forcing the hand and forcing errors here. So I wonder if reverting to old, even though it may be successful against No Tomorrow, in the long run, is the safest approach here for Freedom. But these drafts, bans already coming through. No Tomorrow do have Jin there onto the Urel, but then a Whitemane Diablo pickup after a Deckard ban.
Well, think about this. If Team Freedom, they want to get aggressive, they need to go back to saying, hey, we're not just a macro team. We can play aggressively. Diablo definitely fits into that role. Whitemane can get a lot of healing around the shrines, gets a lot of control. Alex Straza going to be banned out against No Tomorrow, which will have Akafe seeking other avenues for support. But with that Raynor, Murd, and Urel pickup, that is very standard, very strong meta in the early part of the draft for No Tomorrow.
And a pretty big advantage here for Team Freedom in the fact that they do have that support value and already pick up the Whitemane with the Deckard ban out. This is not a battleground where a lot of the other supports really kind of can thrive. It's not going to be the biggest setback here for them, but also with the Urel picked up, they're going to have enough armor to probably be able to sustain through this.
So Genji's still let through. It's something that we've seen Lutano shine on. I mean, he's one of the budding stars that we have here in North America, arguably the top 2 or 3 ranged assassins that we have. With that being said, when he plays Genji, it forces Yoda onto a different style of hero to play. He can play the Greymane, so can Lutano, so we don't know where that goes just yet. They have a lot of follow-up, a lot of kill potential, but I'm really curious to see how far down they'll go with this and where they want to flex the Yoda-Lutano picks.
And one thing, too, that is really big to note here for Team Freedom and the fact that they are committing to the Greymane approach is they have a lot of wave clear in the Blaze and the offlane, and that's one of the biggest elements that I thought Endemic did a good job of punishing. Moving into the Junkrat Leo in the back end made the wave clear advantage into those offlanes really easy to clear it up and make sure that the Greymane pressure later didn't matter, because getting the wave clear buys you time and buys you those seconds within those rotations. Now we see the Greymane picked up again in this approach, but when you look at No Tomorrow's wave clear, It's not the same problem. It is not a Leo Junkrat on the other end. So this right now, I feel like is Freedom, though they are sticking to the Greymane approach, not as detrimental draft-wise as it was against Endemic.
You would say that maybe No Tomorrow favors more towards Shrine control. You have to give them the pepper. The Junkrat actually comes in by way of Team Freedom here, which does give you that flexibility between a Blaze and a Junkrat to have the 3-man roaming squad potentially if one of those is double soaking.
Yeah.
But for the side of No Tomorrow, it's definitely, Tychus does really well against the high health pool, especially a stacked Diablo.
Yeah.
Does really well on the Shrines with the grenade. Give him some pepper. It's a lot of Shrine control. But as you've alluded to, it's not always about early Shrine control when we look at Team Freedom.
Yeah, Team Freedom will be ignoring the first, probably minimum 1 Shrine, probably the second, depending on the circumstances and the advantages that they have at that point in time. So it is, what is No Tomorrow going to do over that first Shrine to be able to deal with that? First thought would be, will you send that solo individual to get rid of the Shrine itself? Urel, not that bad. You know, 1 leap with a, you know, any of the other spells can pretty much get a clear onto those. But you would like somebody more Sonya-esque so you can defend against the Greymane push while Sonya ends up picking up the objective itself. So it's going to be a weird resource attribution on the side of No Tomorrow. But if they hold that off, I do like their teamfight capabilities. Tychus Urel, not a synergy we see often, but giving Tychus that ability to have armor and just go, the bigger they are, the harder that Diablo is going to fall.
We'll see how aggressive that will be. It will be interesting because Tychus, we know, has that Relentless Soldier at level 7, can deal with that Diablo dive. Let's get into it. Game number 1 here. Team Freedom taking on No Tomorrow.
Starting off here is going to be Team Freedom, where we have Collusion on the white main. Lutano playing the gray main this time. Zugrug on the front line, repping the Diablo. Gonna have Nasmus on the offlane playing Blaze here, and last is Yoda on the Junkrat.
On the right side, red will be No Tomorrow. Team, again, going through those roster changes. Casanova moving over to that front line. He will be on Murd, and Tomster moving to the back line now. He's on Raynor. Tychus being played by Shrite. Jen will be in that off lane on Urel, and Akaface on Malfurion.
Something to point out here. Already at 1 there for Whiteman. Gonna go with the Clemency. More individual kind of early game supporting opportunities there from her channel. See how that comes online with the Greymane and the Blaze, because normally the Greymane's going to be a bit more offensive there into the team fighting, and the Blaze will want to either sit back with a bunker or be very aggressive with his jet propulsion positioning. And how does that affect the healing output there of Collusion? As we get ourselves a small pause. Rotational advantage pretty heavily here in favor of Freedom already, though.
Well, I want to talk about this because very clearly, in case you missed it on the mini-map there, we see Blaze and Greymane going top lane.
Yeah.
And there's enough wave clear on the other side when you look at the Junkrat, the Diablo, and the Whitemane to support a 2-3 split. It's not every day, but it does say, okay, Blaze has enough wave clear with the Greymane that we saw the Anub'arak go in with the Greymane, get that top lane push, but they're taking a different approach with a 2-3 split, maybe trying to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and the 2-3 split is a very good approach here for Freedom. They're going to start out with that amount of pressure, wait for somebody to respond and delay and kind of answer to that. And when that happens, then look for the Greymane to counter-rotate, probably worry about Mercenaries, double stack the Mercenaries, Impalers on mid, Impalers on bottom, and then re-rotate out to a different lane. Most likely revisit the top lane, as that is where the very first objective is.
We'll see how that unfolds. Team Freedom, they've been the innovator, especially in the macro game. They've been so well known for it. We'll see if that does come to light. There's a lot of good strategies we've seen. And some form of that will come out. Casanova gets flipped in. Lutano, however, trying to get away as we see Tomster tracking him down on that Raynor.
That disengage was half a fraction of a second early, or later. That would have been Tomster hitting and penetrating around and confirming that kill. Big plays there. All set up by Akaface with a nice entangling root.
Dred, do you worry, though? You and I talk about this all the time, especially the supports right now. Whitemane, we spent a solid 15 or 20 minutes on the car. I've been talking about Whitemane, and here's more of that rotation. And this will be some early damage, especially with the Greymane. Not much Jen can do about it here. But a Malfurion later game without that Ice Block has felt so entirely different. And there's a lot of threat of flanking and getting on the back line between the Blaze, Diablo, and Greymane here.
So I am a little bit concerned, just as you said, Malfurion in general I think I'm concerned with in the current meta in most iterations. But I do think that there is some justification within this composition of No Tomorrow purely on the Yrel armor dependency. It's kind of a pseudo-Tyrael Tranquility composition where you get the shielding mixed with the heals of the Tranquility and natural armor that is provided by the Malfurion itself. And it puts it into a position where it's very difficult to deal with. But the trade-off of that composition is normally that costs you a heroic, which is a very teamfight-focused heroic and takes you a long period of time. So it's easy to bait out. I think that's the biggest concern I have. I think Yrel makes up for the weaknesses, possibly, of the Malfurion, and there's not enough Hardened Engage to get on top of him and secure the kill. But again, you know, I do feel like it is going to be a tough time overall. I was wondering if there was even maybe an adjustment to move on to something like the Twilight Dream, but with Bunker available, it makes it really difficult for Malf to find a way to move up. Ice Block has kind of been the death of Twilight Dream to a certain extent, outside of a few compositions.
Walking forward against the Junkrat Concussion Mine, that scares me. And we'll see the Team Freedom approach. At times, they have definitely ignored the tribute. The scarier part now is that I think Team Freedom has to respond, because that camp will be cleared out, and if you don't respond and that camp is pushing, it's only going to compound the issue. So Team Freedom with an early response for now. There's going to be the follow-up stun. Nice communication and follow-up there, but the heals coming out from Akaface as well as the self-heal for Thompson are going to keep him alive.
Yeah, good job there. Not too many major cooldowns used there. Only about 45 seconds away for Thompson to be able to have his self-heal back up online and available and necessary considering the level 4 adjustment he took. It's a huge trading capabilities there for him. But already we see the Junkrat getting the off-lane clear, whereas Lutano is the individual actually joining for this team fight. Interesting choice here. The Junkrat has better clear but less siege overall, so the longer the better here for Freedom, and even more so considering that. But wasting no time there, Stormbolt with the root and No Tomorrow. Open up and just easily pick up a first blood.
And that neutralizes a lot, and that allows No Tomorrow to turn their attention towards the Punisher, and now Tychus will move down to catch that soak in that mid lane. For the rest of Team Freedom, Dreadnought, the answer seems to be concede and move down and see if they can maximize that pressure as we see Greymane and Whitemane moving down.
Yeah, and I think the more concerning thing with this Jayhao is that already it feels like the first couple of seconds, Team Freedom, the off-lane pressure, it all made a lot of sense to them, and having the Junkrat off on the side soak there, but they didn't delay nearly as long as they would like at the top half, and this is the first example of maybe the early game opener not going as clean for Freedom as they would like. Now the question is, do we get that stubborn kind of approach here where we still see that off-lane forcing and things when No Tomorrow maybe finds themselves with the upper hand?
Punisher baited over, Jhin jumps in, and he jumps back out. Does have that cooldown reduction at level 7. Getting a wall here almost seems necessary. They do get the takedown there. We're seeing Whitemane, and we've seen variations of this build going into the Fanatical power, meaning that we could see more of the aggressive heroic, the offensive style heroic, which by way of aggression can also give you heals, but you sacrifice armor when you go this as a Whitemane.
It is an interesting choice. I've fallen more on the side of a fan of the more traditional Q build, but with the adjustments that have come into it.
We do know Collusion to be more of the aggressive side, especially because he's the most, outside of Tiger JK, he's probably one of the more well-known Kerosene players we have here in North America.
Oh yeah. Nice root from Akaface's zone off of this camp. Really well placed after it was sniffed out there by Team Freedom. Part of the reason Malfurion maybe should, be seen more into the meta. I feel like there, one of his bigger advantages still is that huge area zone control for support. Even though Stukov does that pretty well, Malf is a little bit different. And it's back to the rotations here for these two teams. Neither really getting too much done in the downtime, but Jayhao, there's a responsibility for one of these teams to be a little bit more proactive than the other when it comes to the downtime. We already highlighted how No Tomorrow's composition is more shrine control and then team fighting around that, whereas Freedom is that off-lane pressure here. So we'll see if they can find a way to make that happen, expecting it to be over that top 4 after this next objective spawns.
How much of an impact does it have when you have this style from Team Freedom as we see Nasmus trying to dive? They have minions close. Once it takes down that well, they'll have minions to eat the fort shots, which is why they turn there to make sure they can walk away comfortably. But how impactful was it that it was the first shrine was the top shrine, which also had the shaman camp? If it's another lane, is it maybe easier to execute for Team Freedom?
I think it gets... It's tougher to say easier. but definitely more opportunities available.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is you get the for sure off-lane pressure, which you see Freedom kind of making happen now, but you know No Tomorrow can expect that. So it comes down to, it gives you more plays around what is my opponent going to do with this Shaman, and then how can I capitalize on them having an expected either defense to that or early pressure somewhere else on the battleground. And being able to play around that is a lot easier than, you know, can we make an impaler off pressure elsewhere, which I think is part of the reason we saw the Junkrat being that off-lane side soak. For both teams, now picked up the Shamans a little bit later here for No Tomorrow than that of Freedom. But Freedom, heavy collapse here onto the top lane. They want to get this off-lane pressure, as we were talking about.
This is a good response. It's a 4-man push by Team Freedom, but a 4-man response here from No Tomorrow. Casanova goes in, misses the Stormbolt. We see the follow-up damage there from Diablo coming in for the initiation. But Collusion, of course, supporting there on white main. Camps will be cleared up, and we'll get the response potentially down on the bottom with Team Freedom. You never know.
The fact that No Tomorrow was able to stop that siege is another situation where they see the pretty good success and response towards the early game of Freedom. Tychus in a tough position for now, but J3T not threatened as he goes in onto Zugrug, setting him very low, but the Shadow Charge coming out. Bunker is there. There's a Diablo and Blaze inside. Jin throws down the Tranquility. He's going to sit with the Ardent Defender. Going for the throat, though, is Lutano. Finds himself a nice Rainer and first kill here for them. Go for the throat number 2 onto Jin. Not going to get the kill, but after that Shadow Charge flip over, a second kill here now for Freedom as Lutano tries to make it out.
Judna, Lutano is easily one of my most favorite players to watch. We've got some playmakers, no doubt about it, across all teams, but Lutano has steadily been setting himself apart for this team. It was almost one of those situations where we saw earlier in the year, as Zugra goes in, they might try and confirm another, but that's Casanova, he's able to jump out. But this Team Freedom team was so heavy on the macro, I'm like, man, what if they just turned up the notch on the aggression and let Lutano do work? And I think that's what they're discovering as they go forward here. And they mentioned that Lutano has now been having more of a voice in some of this. So maybe he's making some calls of like, let's go, see if they can make it happen. They've got to be careful if the Punisher jump here does No Tomorrow.
There's the leap. Going to go down before the next leap is relevant. There's still no 13 available, though. Casanova dropping the Stormbolt. No Junkrat to join in the fight, at least not for now. But with his 13, he can be back in a moment. That Ripper Air. Yrel now going to go deal with that in the downtime. It's Freedom after that pickup and that objective. Feeling pretty good.
I really like that response there. Team Freedom backed up to get those minions so they could re-siege on that. And Team Freedom might be able to do that, but we saw an early grenade from Shrite to push those minions back. Casanova trying to survive, does have healing static now, but we saw that and the penetrating round. That way they couldn't dive with the minions. So No Tomorrow, it's those small, minor things that they recognize that shows you they have the potential.
Casanova flipped over after the Shadow Charge. A lot of damage there. Dwarf Toss out, but the Lightning Breath is enough. Slowing down the retreat here of No Tomorrow. Going for the throat was Lutano. Not going to get the first kill, but as the retreat continues, it will be there. Collusion throwing down the chains there with that 13 talents here on white main, setting up another kill here for Freedom. Finding 3 victims of No Tomorrow on bottom, and now quickly gaining that 16 talent tier advantage.
Nice knockback there. Jin's still going to get stunned. There's the follow-up damage. Fanatical Power out, making sure to get that extra damage from the white main. Forces out the Ardent Defender. Just as I said that about No Tomorrow, Team Freedom came back with a better response. They could have gotten that 4 earlier, got the camp, and potentially made a rotation out somewhere else on the map. It forced Team Freedom to go back and get that camp. Team Freedom ended up getting a lot more, I think, than they expected.
I think part of that, too, was they didn't think that No Tomorrow would linger as it was that low of HP for that long. It became a pretty solid dive opportunity there for them, and great punishment coming out from them to be able to set that up. Also, being able to make the rotation out for Jin through mid and then baiting out the Ardent Defender, that is a very big victory for Team Freedom. And now puts them in a position to where they can really force pretty much anything in this downtime with the 16 talent tier advantage. Normally, you'd be afraid of, well, can Yrel sit there, buy a little bit of time, Ardent Defender, and clear another wave to where they limit one of those objectives. It just is pretty much a nice way to hit a pause button, stall out the game a little bit, and deny a major objective in this advantageous position that Freedom's in. But now they still got 53 seconds, so that is going to be a concern. Double Shaman stacked on tap. Top 4 going down, J-Hop. Question here is how much past this? Because if I am Team Freedom, I'm going for at least half a peak.
right now, and you can see on the mini-map, the members from No Tomorrow, they're trying to disengage as quickly as possible to Hearth here, but this is a keep wall minimum. The response here now, no need to risk it. I anticipated them going and being a little more aggressive there.
Yeah, so that's one of these situations where Freedom backing out and getting the objective is going to be more reliable for them over this next spike, but they are risking a possible team fight at the 16 into 16 if we can see somebody make their way towards the bottom lane for No Tomorrow, but nobody with that rotation. I don't think they're going to have that as an option, and that's why I would have liked a little bit more offensive, because you can still bully around with that 16 talent here, and these Punishers are not as effective, and if you get that one kill, you still get that Punisher afterwards. But either way, it's removing any risk or playmaking capabilities of No Tomorrow for now. 30 skeletal defenders here for Team Freedom, as No Tomorrow just about to pick up 16.
Yeah, Tomster's trying to get 16 off of that tower, but by the time he gets 16, it's going to be too late. Zugrug already starting to scout, looking for a potential kill. 16 picked up. We do have Odin on the side of No Tomorrow, so it does have good defense, but with no wall here on the fort, that defense will come behind the keep. See if they confirm the Odin for the defense.
If so, you'd expect it about before the leap comes in, just for the wind-up animation. There it is. Now the leap, fade by Casa, and the defense here from No Tomorrow. Sidewall already taken by Freedom. Zugrug questioning if he can get a shadow charge into anybody into that fort. Finds a Jhin, flip over. Ardent Defender is back if necessary. Lightning Breath goes down. Akaface getting ripped apart there. Throws down the Moonfire, able to get the heals available. Ardent Defender uses the Riptire, blows up onto Jay Shrite. Jhin gives armor to Casanova as he leaps forward. Bunker dropped. 3 members of Freedom get into it.
Dread, I would have expected that bunker maybe under the keep to continue the dive, and it takes the keep shots, allowing you to siege longer if you hop out with that armor that you get from it. Team Freedom disengaging early, but credit to No Tomorrow for another staunch defense. It's one thing that Tychus does really well on this map with that Odin, is that it can help in defense. It can also help clear the shrine. For No Tomorrow, they've had a hard time getting onto the shrines at the same footing. Jhin goes in deep to get this thing started.
Yeah, but the root lands onto Jhin, and a lot of damage going. Go for the throw is there, but Lutano doesn't actually get the kill. Jay Shrite's now the focus as Nasmus misses the jet propulsion. Casanova not going to throw a Stormbolt yet. Instead, gets the door toss out. Thompson on an island, though, gets flipped over by Zugrug. Can Jhin make it in time to give him the armor? Help him out there. Concussion mine used by Yoda.
He got in position originally to get that knockback, get the heal off of his penetrating round, so he got that, but he still has a long trek home. There is no fort. Zugrug still continuing, but you could see the Rainer's Raider scouting for vision there. Tomster able to get away. Luckily, I might add. Dread, we've been sitting on 16 for Team Freedom for a while, but this is something that you had discussed with me previously, was how much you like the Lash potential healing output. We actually see Lashing Out getting that cooldown reduction if it hits a hero at 16. Pairing this with the build that we're getting, especially with the Fanatical Power, Collusion's been able to put out some pretty decent numbers in these team fights so far.
Yeah, I actually really like it on maps, like I was saying, Infernal Shrines, things where you know you have that major objective team fight for a long period of time. I felt like normally when we see it, we would like it with another melee, because against that many melees, you can get a lot of value out of the reset opportunities from it. But I do like the adjustment there from Collusion. It's cool to be able to see that from him. Also, another thing to keep in mind is it just amplifies the opportunities for his setup with his whip into the root with his 13 talents here. Just having that uptime
mega cooldown between that 1 and 16.
Yeah, and not having to rely on that level 1 there, or excuse me, on the W cooldown being available. It just makes it really easy to set up multiple root opportunities there for the team.
The level 1, you get that passive cooldown reduction on that, pairing that, and does allow you to get several in there. So Collusion still trying to be that playmaker. Level 20 picked up here for Team Freedom. Dreadnought, it's a tough defense for No Tomorrow. They still have that bottom keep standing. They could conceivably defend a position with Odin, but they're going to defend this top lane first with it.
Yeah.
Instead of that bottom lane defense.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest in the fact that I'm surprised Freedom even stuck around that long. The minute I heard that, I walk away and I go, victory is mine, boys, because I have an Odinless fight with a 20 spike advantage over this middle shrine that, or excuse me, the bottom shrine that I'm going to have the opportunity to threaten to keep with afterwards. This is a big spike here for Team Freedom. If they have the opportunity to get rid of the Punisher fast enough, it's got a pretty big travel time, about 20 seconds to make it to the keep on bottom. they might be able to force this before even Odin comes back online, and that would be the ideal circumstances. Just rush to beat Odin defense capabilities of No Tomorrow.
Well, Junkrat dealt with, you can see him on the bottom left, dealt with that wave that was already pushing in. Blaze starting to prep that bottom wave so that that Punisher can get more value. No Tomorrow would like level 20 for the defense, but now that Team Freedom has cleared out that bottom lane and prepped this, No Tomorrow, I think, has to respond here, Dread.
Yeah, they're holding out here on the last two. They're finally able to pick it up for the Diablo. So we're now going to join the rest of the team. Front wall already taken down, as we have highlighted.
Odin's still 20 seconds away. It's not going to be here.
Well, it will be like after, not for the first leap, but after the first leap. But that's what we were talking about last time, is you want it pre-Odin before the leap even comes in. 15 seconds between leap 1 and 2. And we got the Punisher here at the keep.
There's the jump. No follow-up on that. Nasmus comes in, but Nature's Cure going to be there. Punisher will return its attention towards that bottom keep. Odin is available. He would like level 20 Dreadnought for that big red button, which gives you the extra duration.
Leaps up.
I don't know if they're going to have time for it.
They can't move up, otherwise the leap will come in. Casanova eats a Riptire. Anybody want to defend that? There goes the Odin. No big red button on that. Leap available. Cass is going to be the one who tanks it. Avatar pop. Shadow Charge combo goes through. A lot of damage onto Casanova, but the Dwarf Toss out. Akaface falling very low to the Lightning Breath, unable to sustain. And he is first to drop here, is now Team Freedom focused towards this core.
Odin is still out, but it's about to expire. The Punisher low on health. Casanova goes in, but you can see the Lord of Terror ripping through those health bars. They get the takedown on Jhin. It's a 5 versus 3, level 20 advantage. And No Tomorrow seems to be falling as Team Freedom trying to close out game number 1.
Thompster surviving that one. Go for the throw. Didn't get the reset. 50% still ticking away there onto the core. But now Freedom realize it's a bit closer than they expected. Probably going to have to focus this one down. And game 1 going over to Freedom.
That all in on the Muradin, it was really fast and kind of hard to see, but we did see Purge the Wicked picked up by Whitemane. And when I saw the Dwarf Toss away, because you get 25 armor on Dwarf Toss, I saw 0. So I think that was, that health bar of Muradin was obliterated. Initially, he was just able to survive. You could see Akaface doing everything he could to hold on. But for Team Freedom Dreadnought, nothing fancy. But they won.
Yeah.
It was clean, had a 2-level lead, pushed.
I think if I was to look at this game and evaluate it, you know, who was the more, you know, kind of surprise out of the two. I feel like I'm more surprised with No Tomorrow. They did actually a really good job with some of those off-lane rotations, dealing with the top half. There was even a moment there where I thought they were going to set up a really good bait with Jhin on the top half. They didn't commit to it because not enough people in rotation, but they were very clearly worried about the early game of Freedom and doing the things proper to handle it. A couple of picks here and there when it came to the raw team fight, but that I can't help but feel like is just one of those, you know, we got to work on it overall as a roster. So coming in with the game plan and helping limiting the damage that Team Freedom would have had happen. It's just that Freedom, when it came to the skirmishes, they were the better team.
The common theme that we would say when we saw Team Freedom is you make one mistake and we take advantage of that and we never let it go. That bottom lane, we saw a nice defense from No Tomorrow against that bottom lane Punisher in the early part of the game. They had the defense. We saw the re-engage from Team Freedom, and those 3 picks seemed to be enough for No Tomorrow to get that one mistake, capitalize, and just snowball from there. And once they have control, Dread, they're so strong in those situations, just controlling the map, controlling the rotations when they have the lead, because it's so hard to engage into them.
And it was even more so from most of the time that we've actually seen this composition from them, because typically when we see the Greymane composition, it's very all in on the Greymane, and that there's no off-lane pressure whatsoever, but they very much had the tools with the Junkrat and the Blaze to make up for that. So we removed one of the biggest holes, I would say, that existed with most of the Greymane compositions Freedom had happen, and I think that's why it looked even more exaggerated with that kind of small breaking point, is they were getting experience and pressure that we had never seen them have before, even with the Greymane.
No Tomorrow, obviously, you take away that small deficit that they had in experience on that bottom fort, and it seems like they could definitely take a different step in the right direction. They held strong in some team fights. The draft definitely played to their favor around the objective. They just were still waiting for that complete game. Dreadnought, you had brought a stat to light to me about their performance as of late. When we look at their record in their last, 5-6 series?
They don't go down easy.
They don't go down easy.
They almost always are able to take a game against some of the biggest names, even in North America. And that has been the case since No Tomorrow's entrance of all of HGC. So it's been one of those, I expect them still to be able to even take a game here against Team Freedom at some point throughout this, maybe even more than that. But based on that first game, I do think that they had the research that I didn't expect from No Tomorrow, but the execution, again, just not quite there. But that is something we knew that they are very much working on internally.
Their last 6 series, they've had at least 1 win in every one of those series, including against the top teams. But we're going to find out where Battleground number 2 is